Taveha manasya nunam vidambanam. Nayasya kaschid daitosti karhi ched. Dveshascha yasmin vishama mathirnunam. Naveda kaschid bhagavam shikirshitam. Taveha manasya nunam vidambanam. Nayasya kaschid daitosti karhi ched. Dveshascha yastir vishama mathirnunam. Naveda kaschid bhagavam shikirshitam. Taveha manasya nunam vidambanam. Nayasya kaschid daitosti karhi ched. Dveshascha yasmin vishama mathirnunam. Word to word translation. Na does not. Veda no. Kaschid anyone. Bhagavan O Lord. Chikirshitam pastimes. Tava your. Ihamanasya like the worldly men. Runam of the people in general. Vidambanam misleading. Na never. Yasya his. Kaschit anyone. Daitaha object of special favor. Asti there is. Karhichit anywhere. Dveshyaha object of envy. Cha and yasmin unto him. Vishama partiality. Matihi conception. Nunam of the people. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and are so misleading. You have no special object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial. Purport. The Lord's mercy upon the fallen souls is equally distributed. He has no one as the specific object of hostility. The very conception of the personality of Godhead as a human being is misleading. His pastimes appear to be exactly like a human being's, but actually they are transcendental and without any tinge of material contamination. He is undoubtedly known as partial to his pure devotees, but in fact he is never partial, as much as the sun is never partial to anyone. By utilizing the sun's rays, sometimes even the stones become valuable. Whereas a blind man cannot see the sun, although there are enough sun rays before him. Darkness and light are two opposite conceptions, but this does not mean that the sun is partial in distributing its rays. The sun rays are open to everyone, but the capacities of the receptacles differ. Foolish people think that devotional service is flattering the Lord to get special mercy. Factually, the pure devotees who are engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord are not a mercantile community. A mercantile house renders service to someone in exchange for values. The pure devotee does not render service unto the Lord for such exchange, and therefore the full mercy of the Lord is open for him. Suffering and needy men, inquisitive persons or philosophers making temporary connections with the Lord to serve a particular purpose. Lord, to serve a particular purpose. When the purpose is served, there is no more relation with the Lord. A suffering man, if he is pious at all, prays to the Lord for his recovery. But as soon as the recovery is over, in most cases, the suffering man no longer cares to keep any connection with the Lord. The mercy of the Lord is open for him, but he is reluctant to receive it. That is the difference between a pure devotee and a mixed devotee. Those who are completely against the service of the Lord are considered to be in abject darkness. Those who ask for the Lord's favor only at the time of necessity are partial recipients of the mercy of the Lord, and those who are 100% engaged in the service of the Lord are full recipients of the mercy of the Lord. Such partiality in receiving Lord's mercy is relative to the recipient, and it is not due to the partiality of the all-merciful Lord. When the Lord descends on this material world by His all-merciful energy, He plays like a human being. And therefore, it appears that the Lord is partial to His devotees only. But that is not a fact. Despite such apparent manifestation of partiality, His mercy is equally distributed. In the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all persons who died in the fight before the presence of the Lord got salvation without the necessary qualifications, because death before the presence of the Lord purifies the passing soul from the effects of all sins. And therefore, the dying man gets a place somewhere in the transcendental abode. Somehow or other, if someone puts himself open in the sun rays, he is sure to get the requisite benefit both by heat and by ultraviolet rays. Therefore, the conclusion is that the Lord is never partial. It is wrong for the people in general to think of Him as partial. Thus sends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Itinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pasyat Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktaranda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and are so misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial. So, many times we hear about, how when people think about religion, they'll say, what kind of God is He? He's only partial to people who go for His blessings, right? And they accuse God of being partial. See, the reality is that the favor of the Lord is available to everybody, right? In some religions, they use either scare tactics, or they will use, some enticements to get them to accept God, right? You might have heard of this. They will say, if you don't accept so-and-so God, then you will be condemned to go to hell forever. Right? Many of you would have heard this, right? And it's a very common thing, it's like, it's like a very commonly talked about thing. Just all you have to do is just take shelter, and you'll be liberated. If you don't, you'll be condemned to hell forever. The reality is, yes, if you don't surrender to um, an acharya who is representing God, you will eventually end up in hell. Maybe not permanently, but the nature of this world is, in this material world, sense gratification puts you into more sense gratification, and it's like a downward spiral that takes you down into hellish regions. Right? But even then, you're still given an opportunity to keep elevating yourself back and try to get back, into a human form and perfect yourself. Right? That's what we understand. The Lord is not being partial, but it is dependent upon the receptacle, the person receiving it. Srila Prabhupada always used to give the story of, a boy, who is sitting in his room with all the curtains closed, and he's sleeping at 10 o'clock in the morning, right, on a Saturday. And then he's telling, his mom is calling out and telling him, hey, it's 10 o'clock, get up, get up. He's saying, no, it's all dark inside, the sun has not come out. Right? Now, if you sit inside a room and close all the windows, close all the doors, then it looks like the sun is not up yet. Right? And for him, it's an objective reality. He says, yes, the sun is not up yet. It's dark inside. But what is creating the darkness inside is the fact that you got all the windows closed and the doors closed. And you just go, and then the mother will come and say, here, let me open the door and the window, and then bright sunlight coming out. Right? Like 10 o'clock in the morning, the sun will be already up pretty high. Right? So very similarly, we are closing our doors to the mercy of the Lord. Right? And that is why we do not get the mercy of the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada talks about how somebody can be can either not at all get the mercy of the Lord, or can be a partial recipient of the mercy of the Lord. Right? And it very beautifully explains there's one sloka from the Bhagavad Gita, that's what he's referencing here in this purport. In the 7th chapter, text number 16, in the Gita, Krishna says, Chaturvida bhajante mam janaha sukrito arjuna artho jignasuhu artharthi gnani cha bharatarshaba. So these 4 people, actually, is anybody in these 4 people a full recipient of the mercy of the Lord? Who are the 4 people that Krishna is talking about? Who is Artho? Somebody in distress. And then who is the second one? Artho, then Jignasu. Jignasu is inquisitive for what? Could be who is God, sometimes, the inquisitive about philosophy and, things like that. Yeah. Then, third one is Artharthi. What is it? Money. After some fulfillment of desires through money. And then last one is Gnani. So is anybody here a full recipient of the mercy of the Lord? Why? Who is the most recipient of the mercy of the Lord out of these 4? Gnani. Right? Now, why is a Gnani not a full recipient of the mercy of the Lord? Huh? Ego is there. Somebody says something else. Huh? It's not in relationship with the Lord. You can be in the relationship. Huh? Not, yeah. See, Prabhupada explains this because it is very, very rare to find some pure devotee
bringing out this message, because everybody thinks, these are the reasons why we go to God anyway. And at least they will say, Gnani, is like out of not any desire, but he wants to understand the Lord. That's why, he should be this thing. But Prabhupada explains how each of these behaviors is partially getting the mercy of the Lord just because of what you're asking. Ye tamam prapadyante tam stata eva bhajamyaham. As you surrender unto me, the same way I'll reciprocate. Like that is the nature of the mercy of the Lord. His Lord is very eagerly waiting for us to turn towards Him and ask Him. And what are you asking Him? Artho, you are in distress. Oh God, give me relief from this distress, this one. And some people, if they get relief, they will leave God. If they don't get relief, they'll also leave God. Right? Different people. There was one actual true story of one very famous, one very rich couple. They were very staunch Christians, and they were big donors of the church and all that. And it so happened that the husband had a heart attack right in the church, and he passed away. Right after that incident, that his wife became, lost all faith in church and stopped going to church. Right? So, you have a distress, or a distress is created, or if a distress is not satisfied, then you leave God. Then there are others, they'll say, oh, I have this disease, I have that problem, this problem, this problem. As soon as problem is solved, they'll forget God. Right? Back to, their own world of, this thing. At best, who is considered a staunch devotee means you make a agreement with God, right? You take out this distress and I'll give you something. Right? And then you go give that something. And they'll say, 108 coconuts I will break. Right? Very cheap problem solution, right? If you have to go to doctor, it'll be a few million coconuts you have to, or a few thousand coconuts you have to break. Here just 108 coconuts and problem is solved. So they're only partially getting, if you're coming to God and asking, give me relief from this, relief from that, Krishna will say, okay, if that's all you want, take it. Right? The reality is, in a devotee's life, we should ask this question. What is the value, why do we get these distresses? What is the value of that distress in our life as devotees, even after we have surrendered to the Lord? So some people will say, it's okay if I get distress before I surrender. Now I'm fully surrendered to God. Why am I getting distress? Right? There is actually, we should think about this. Now, there are a few things, factors which the Lord considers. See, one thing is, the Lord does not want to short circuit His own material loss. You will see that's why even when the Lord solves the problems of His devotees, He's very cleverly doing it, not breaking any of His own laws. Right? Because if the Lord starts breaking rules left and right, then what is the purpose of these laws? Why are you here in the material world? Then He is actually being partial. Then He is being partial. And he can be subject to people's criticism, right? That, why are you being partial to this thing? So Lord actually will not, try to break His own rules. What He tries to do is, within those rules, He creates situations for His devotees in multiple ways to actually get over the distress, right? That's why it looks like even a pure devotee, we see in Srila Prabhupada's own life, he's a pure devotee of the Lord, and it looks like, he's going through distress externally. Right? But those distresses become an opportunity for that pure devotee to show by example for others, how do you remember God? How do you engage in the Lord's service in all kind of situations? Right? In any kind of situation, how do you continue to be
engaged in the Lord's service. Many of you would have seen this very inspiring video of Srila Prabhupada during his last days, right? He's sitting on the bed there, hardly you can, there's hardly any, it's just skin touching bones. He's like so emaciated, but then he's just talking from the Bhagavatam and preaching. He's saying Krishna is this. When you see that, you can understand, the mood of Srila Prabhupada, the mood of a pure devotee, how none of these things matter, right? Then Jignasuhu. Jignasuhu is somebody who is looking for knowledge, right? Now, this knowledge, Jignasuhu, the inquisitive, sometimes, is mostly driven by, they just want to understand some aspects of this world. Why is there suffering in this world? Why is this, they may want to know this. If you're truly inquisitive to understand the Supreme Lord, then automatically all the other anarthas will just go away, right? But typically, a Jignasuhu is out of interest, out of understanding, and sometimes after getting some knowledge, they'll say, oh, now I know everything about Krishna consciousness, right? Chanchalapati Prabhu, he was giving a class recently where he was talking about people. There were devotees as well, some people who came in touch with Srila Prabhupada. And then one particular example he was giving of somebody who was sitting in his class and who just walked away. He was crying and then he walked away. And then he says, I want to directly connect with God. And then he just walks away. Right? So this is the thing, if you're going after knowledge, knowledge by itself, gnana by itself, jignasuhu, inquisitiveness, may not get you to the Supreme Lord, because you may get information about God, you may understand everything about the philosophy and know every part of it, but if that is not translated into realization and is not translated into action of the person in their lives, then what's the use of such knowledge? It's only book knowledge at that point, right? And artha-arthi, one who is desiring material gain. Srila Prabhupada says this is all mercantile mentality. Right? What is a mercantile mentality? You are doing exchange. You give me this, I'll give you this. And you are not getting the full mercy of the Lord, and you're just getting caught up in a business exchange. And the point is, it's okay to do, if you want to do business, it's good to do business with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? Like, he's the biggest businessman, he can give you anything. It's good to do business with him. But our unfortunate situation is we'll go to Krishna and ask for foolish things. Right? That is a problem. We'll ask for very foolish things, and we get caught up in that. In the Bruhad Bhagavatamrita, there is a story of Gopakumar, the story of the devotee. Has anybody read this story of Gopakumar? Some of you have, right? So the story of Gopakumar is given to explain to devotees the power of chanting the holy names of the Lord. So this Gopakumar was a cowherd boy in Vrindavan, right? And so, as a cowherd boy, they used to see this one, person who looked like a madman. He would suddenly cry, he would suddenly laugh, and he would suddenly, faint, and all that. But he was very good to these cowherd boys, and so he had a very good relationship with them, and he was very affectionate toward these cowherd boys. So these cowherd boys also had affection towards him, and they would give him milk, they would exchange
niceties, and and they would be like friends. So one day, this Gopakumar was sitting on the, he was traveling alone, herding cows, and then he came across this man alone. And then on the banks of the Yamuna, he had gone to take a bath, and then he came back, and then he said, "Why don't you go now take a bath in the Yamuna and then come back to me, and I'll give you a special mantra. And this mantra is going to transform your life." So this Gopakumar had faith in him, and he was a nice man. He was taking good care of them. So he went and took a bath and came back, and then he gave him what is known as Gopal mantra, and he said, "You chant this, and then your whole life will be a big success." Right? And so he gave that mantra, and he could not even, like, as soon as he finished said the mantra, and he fainted, because he would go into ecstasy as soon as he would chant that mantra. He was in that stage of ecstatic devotion to the Lord. And once Gopakumar received this mantra, right, he would very carefully chant the mantra, cultivate it, take care of it with a lot of care and attention. And then as he was chanting this mantra, slowly he started losing interest in taking care of the cows and playing with his friends and all those things. Right? He completely lost interest in all of that. And then he would chant, and then he would be so happy, so blissful in the chanting that he sort of gave up all those interest in this. And then he started just walking away from Vrindavan and started walking into the forest and just walked away. He kept walking, and he came all the way to Prayag, the confluence of Ganga and Yamuna. And there he would go there to Prayag, and then there he would continue his chanting. And the story goes on. It's a long story, but I'll try to summarize it in a very short version. So there he met a Brahmana who was worshipping a Saligrama Shila. And so there he was so much in ecstasy by seeing the Lord in that form. And he would, when the Brahmana would do the worship, and then usually Shaligram Shila, what they do is they'll put it back in a box. You've seen this? Because it's a simpler form of the Lord to worship. After finishing the worship, they'll put him in a box. Oh, then this Gopakumar said, "Why are you putting him in this box? Why are you keeping him closed like that? How would the Lord feel if he's closed up like that?" And this Brahmana said, "I'm a very simple Brahmana. I can only do some worship, little worship. If you want to see an opulent worship of the Lord where he's always there and he's like living like a thing, then go to this temple where the king worships the Lord, and that's where you'll see him being very opulently worshipped." Then he goes over there, and then he sees the beautiful deity of the Lord and very opulently being worshipped by the king. And very, very opulent worship was going on. Every day there would be so many offerings, and then so many people will come. Like if you've been to Jaipur, and you'll see Radha Govindaji there. Like, thousands of people come for Mangala Aarti, and very opulently the Lord is worshipped, right in the palace itself. So like that, this king had a very beautiful opulent worship. And he would just stay there in the corner in the temple, and he would just chant and live over there. And this went on for many days. And one day the king died. So when the king died, all his ministers came, and they were looking for a suitable person as a replacement for the king. And when they saw Gopakumar, they said, "Oh, look at this person. What qualifications he has got." They could clearly see in him all the good qualities. And then they said, "Oh, he's the person who's ideal person to become our king." And they make him the king. And then once he becomes the king, And he's chanting, and he's getting so much ecstasy from that, he loses his interest completely in the kingdom also. And in taking care of the king, he's become a big king, but he has no interest in that. And then he was just worshipped in serving the Lord, but then he would do elaborate worship of the deities, and he would distribute a lot of prasadam and all that. But then he found out that when prasadam people take, they're not honoring properly, they're wasting prasadam. And so he would get very dejected. Just because, because you see what happens sometimes, people, they take it, they're not able to honor fully or something, or they keep it for a few days, it gets spoiled. People are not very careful about honoring prasadam properly. And he gets very dejected that, people are doing that. And then he hears about Jagannath Puri. Right? In Jagannath Puri, even now I think there is there's tradition that, prasadam, how much ever this thing it is, it stays fresh. And devotees always honor it. And so he said, I want to go to Puri. And then he goes all the way to Jagannath Puri and starts seeing the beautiful form of the Lord, gets mesmerized, and starts worshipping Lord Jagannath. And he spends his time over there. So, then actually the story goes on. And when he's over there, he's told about how the Lord is worshipped in so much opulence by Indra. Very elaborate worship is done by Indra, and how this thing. So then he said, if Jagannath is worshipped with so much opulence, Indra must be doing it at a much bigger scale. This thing, and he just desires to see the worship of the Lord by Indra. And then immediately is promoted to Indraloka. And there he goes and sees the beautiful worship of Indra, worshipping the Lord. You can imagine the level of opulence Indra would have. Right? If here in this material world, we are worshipping at some level, you can imagine how much, higher the worship of Indra is. And then the story goes on of how he was worshipping Indra and all that. And then it so happens that Indra gets news about it, that he was going to be cursed by some Brahmana. So he had done something. And so he gets scared of this curse of the Brahmana and leaves in the Indra Loka and just goes away. At that time, all the people, the rishis are looking at, okay, who is now ready to take Indra's position? And who do you think they put in Indra's position? Right? Invariably, again, same story repeats again. Gopakumar, they see, he's got all the qualities, and they make him Indra. And then he's in Indra's position, but his desire is to serve the Supreme Lord. And there, even in that position, he's always thinking of the Lord, always chanting, and loses complete interest in Indraloka and being the Indra's kingdom. And his main intention is to serve the Lord. And the story continues that over there, he saw some rishis from Satyaloka. And said, in Satyaloka they worship the Lord like this, in big this thing. And then he says, I want to see the Lord in Satyaloka, and the Lord being worshipped by these exalted personalities. Right? After all, in the heavenly kingdom, they are Sakama Bhaktas. Right? Prabhupada explains. Right? They are devotees. You should be careful. Why should you be careful? Because your desires will be fulfilled. That is might be elevated all the way up to a Gnani. A Gnani is actually knowledge of understanding of, I am a spirit soul. I am not this body. He has this understanding. You can't be a Gnani without that. But still, he's caught up in that, in the ego of being a Gnani and being in fully knowledge and enjoying that, the happiness that comes with pure knowledge. Right? You're still not thinking about serving the Lord. You're still not thinking that I don't take anything from Krishna, but I want to give something. I want to give my service to the Lord. Right? So that is the nature of a pure devotee, that he is always thinking about serving the Lord. So that's why Srila Prabhupada says in the purport here, the Lord's favor, some people take the Lord's favor only at the time of necessity. They are partial recipients of the mercy of the Lord. And those who are 100% engaged in the service of the Lord are full recipients of the mercy of the Lord. Such partiality in receiving the Lord's mercy is relative to the recipient, and it is not due to the partiality of the all-merciful Lord. It is not that the Lord is being partial. It is not that the Lord is withholding some mercy. It is just dependent on what you are asking from the Lord, how much you are able to receive it. Right? And then in this purport, Prabhupada gives the example of someone putting himself in the sun rays. Right? It depends on how, if you go and lock yourself up in a room and say, oh, I'm not getting the mercy of the sun. Well, you can't. Right? You are the one who is preventing the mercy of the sun from falling on you. And that's the reason you are not benefiting from the full effect of sun falling on you. Right? So that is the piece of being that the Lord does not give any special favor. His special favor is available to everybody, depending on what you ask. Right? And then the other part in this verse is, nor do you have any object of envy. The Lord is actually fundamentally the most unenvious person possible. If you really think about how the Lord behaves with his devotees and see the interaction with everybody, not just devotees, you will see that there is not even the slightest tinge of envy with the Supreme Lord. He is ready to give every living entity, as much opulence as him, as much beauty as him, as much knowledge as him. Think about the Vaikuntha Lokas. The amount of opulence and knowledge and beauty and fame and renunciation that everybody has is almost equal to the Lord. He's ready to give that. Without thinking for a second, he'll give that position to anybody, to any of his devotees. That's the level of the Sarupya Mukti, right? He's ready to give. They look exactly like the Lord himself. And so we see here that, when people think that Lord is being envious, or Lord is being partial, or Lord is not being kind to people, we have to introspect and think what exactly is there, because the Lord is always, in all situations, he is equally merciful to everyone and impartial, very impartial. So we'll stop here. Anybody has any quick questions or comments? What is that? Somebody has a question? Announcement, yes, I have announcement. Let me see if somebody has questions first. Yes. Tribulations. Yeah. So you are trying to see that why did Pandavas go through so many trials and tribulations? And if we go through trials and tribulations, we understand, it's from our previous karma and all those things. But why did, pure devotees like Pandavas go through that, right? See, you should understand that, when pure devotees of the Lord come to this world, they are only playing a part. That trials and tribulations, as I said, these are, they are enhancing their interaction with the Lord. It's not even like, it's almost like, if you think about in Goloka Vrindavana, right? The Lord is doing different pastimes. He will suddenly, he's with the gopis and he suddenly disappears from the view. That disappearance of the view looks like it is causing distress to the gopis. But that is that's the only way you can experience that rasa of separation. And because the rasa of separation from a lover is supposed to be higher than the rasa of being with the lover. So how will they ever experience that highest rasa? So that is why in the spiritual world, there are Yogamaya has the role of doing all these different activities and interactions that are all purely meant for enhancing the pleasure of everybody involved over there. For a pure devotee, even though he's in this material world, they're almost in Yogamaya at that point. Right? They are experiencing Yogamaya, and they're, see, when we look at it, we say, oh, they are in this forest, they are struggling to go food and this, and all this trouble, and they put in a house and set on fire, and they have to escape. But if you can imagine, all of those things that are happening are actually sources of joy and remembrance of the Lord and pleasure, then it is like, here is one more opportunity for remembering the Lord. Here is one more different way of thinking of the Lord. Here is one more way of experiencing the Lord. And that is for pure devotees. So we don't have to be thinking that, oh, if I also become a devotee, Lord will put me through some special difficulties and troubles. And we are not at all anywhere close to that stage. And the Lord, actually, you will see what our extent of surrender to Him is, and He will just, most of us experience what we are supposed to experience anyway, in a way that the Lord is still protecting us and giving us the knowledge and the remembrance and understanding to remain spiritually happy in all situations. For the pure devotees, it is just a way to enhance the pleasure of the Lord and the pleasure of His devotees as well. Okay. So we should know in our lives, we should understand that we are definitely being taught a lesson kind of a thing, right? Like a lesson in the sense that how we can improve on and enhance our surrender. And the Pandavas are also teaching by example. By example, they are showing, and they are showing how each of those trials and tribulations can be a source of renewed surrender to the Lord. Any other questions, comments? Okay. So there's one announcement before we close. Starting from I think today, we'll be sending out an email. We're going to have devotees taking roles of being facility managers to take care of the temple's activities while, especially weekends, Friday to Sunday. And when we come here on Saturday mornings, and attend the class, right after this, since we're all here, they have some request for a little help for about 10-15 minutes to do some quick services so that they can keep the temple ready for the next program. And today, both Satchinandan and Sanatana are playing the co-facilitator role, sort of tag teaming. Sanatana is new to all of this. And they have some quick 10-15 minute services for all of us. So please
as soon as you finish prasadam, they're going to be there and they will quickly tell what needs to be done. If we can help for 10-15 minutes, then we can all together do it and the temple will be ready for the next program. Okay. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Bol Premanande.